Here we go. We're up and running, and welcome to a live trade deadline day edition of the Athletic Hockey Show. It's Ian Mendes, Hailey, Salvian. Hey, we're reunited again. They said it would never happen. Yeah, they said it would never happen live. Coming at you live, the Athletic Hockey Show on YouTube. We want to encourage all of our viewers and listeners to subscribe at youtube.com/@theathletic Hockey Show. We're on Twitter. We're coming at you live. It is just after 2:30 Eastern time. I am inside the Canadian Tire Center, home of the Ottawa Senators. Hailey Salvian is in a hotel room in parts unknown.
Yeah, an undisclosed U.S. location.
Yeah, U.S. location. And now you may have to leave at some point in the early part of this because you may have room service. You've timed this out impeccably.
I ordered a coffee a half an hour ago from downstairs because this is one of those nice hotels where you can get like the full carafe of coffee sent upstairs, not just a cup of coffee. Like I could have gone down to a Starbucks and did that, but I could get like a jug with an IV drip actually. And it's taking a little bit of time to.
Yeah, how's that working out for you? Not so well right now.
I'm still exhausted. Yeah,
exactly. So if Hailey
we'll
dips
see
out,
how it goes.
Yeah, if Hailey dips out for a second because there's a knock at the door, off to pick up the carafe of coffee. Yeah. If anybody watching us right now, like I said, we're live, and if you've got any questions for us, you can drop them into the chat there. We'll absolutely handle some of your questions as we go. Just to set up the show for the viewers and the listeners. Coming up in about just under 10 minutes from now, Fluto Shinzawa covers the Boston Bruins. Is going to be with us. And I got to tell you, Hailey, but if you had to pick your team right now, a lot of people think that that's the definitive team to beat, right? The Boston Bruins. Everything that they've done around the deadline. So Fluto at 240. And then we're going to go to the opposite side of the spectrum. Then there's the Chicago Blackhawks. They're not winning the Stanley Cup. In fact, they might be in the running for Connor Bedard, but Mark Lazarus does a great job covering Chicago. Also a national writer for The Athletic. Laz at 250. Sean Gentile. The snark factor will be upped considerably when Sean Gentile joins the show just after 3 o'clock. Sean has been doing a ton of work along with the other Sean McAdoo. You were part of this too, were you not today?
The live blog, yeah.
The live blog. So Sean Gentile at 3 o'clock, James Myrtle, senior managing editor with us at The Athletic, also, of course, does a great job covering the Toronto Maple Leafs. James Myrtle comes by at about 3:15 to kind of put a bow on this, but this has been a real quiet day. But part of that, Hailey, I know people are like, oh, this day is really boring and it's dull, but it's worth the trade-off, isn't it, for what the frenetic pace and the excitement and all the drama and all the trades we've seen in the last 10 days, right? This is worth it.
I think so. I mean, it makes the actual day itself really boring, like you said, Ian. Like, sometimes we think of deadline day and all the moves start coming through, and you got 8 hours of TV to fill on, whatever network it is that has a show on from 8 a.m. until 4 or 5 o'clock at night. So it makes that a little bit less entertaining. But like, we can't say that there hasn't been any action because that is just completely not true. When I was looking at Cat Friendly earlier today, they had a really great statistic because everyone keeps saying like, it feels like it's been really busy leading into the deadline. Yeah, that is quantifiable. It is busier than it has ever been in the last decade in the 2 weeks leading into the trade deadline. So the previous high for deals in the 2 weeks leading up to the deadline over the last decade is 20. There has been 43. And there were 43 trades in the 2 weeks leading up to deadline day, according to Cap Friendly.
Yeah, and it's not just and it's not just quantity, it's quality, right? We're talking the Ryan O'Reillys and the Bo Horvats and the Patrick Kanes and the Jacob Chychrins, and these are elite kind of game-changing players that have all kind of shifted around. So like I said, we'll take your comments coming in live here. If you're following along here, drop them in. Corey has written in. Look at this, Corey. We really appreciate this. Corey says, 2 of my favorite people at The Athletic.
Thanks, Corey.
We assume Corey's talking about us, but maybe Corey just threw that in there. Didn't know who is. It's a very generic compliment. However, Julia helps us out a little bit here. Julia says, add Sean Gentili and Shayna. And this would be the Mount Rushmore of my favorite Athletic writers.
Okay.
So there you go. We'll take it. How about Shayna with some, what are we calling these? Shea bombs? Shea makers, maybe? Shea makers?
I don't like that.
It's like a haymaker. It's like
I don't
shea
like
maker.
that.
No? Okay.
She's just breaking some trades. So this
great.
one's puzzling. Dryden Hunt looks to be on the move again, this time to Calgary. Of all the things that I thought maybe the Flames would do today, it wasn't that.
Yeah.
Why?
Calgary, there's a handful of teams that are in a bit of a odd spot. Calgary's one of them. Lars has a question for us actually here.
Okay.
Haley. Lars says, greetings from Sweden. Awesome job today. Any new talk about the Red Wings moves? Sundqvist to the Wild was interesting. Is there any truth to JVR to the Red Wings? So I just saw this within the last couple of minutes, and obviously, Lars, appreciate we're kind of trying to follow along as we host this show, that Seattle and Detroit were said to be upping the ante to try to get James Van Riemsdyk, JVR here. And that to me is interesting because Detroit, they came into Ottawa, they came into this building, 5 days ago, Haley, 2 teams that were on kind of parallel tracks, and Ottawa beats them 6-2, 6-1. And all of a sudden, Detroit starts selling goodbye Bertuzzi, and they make a series of trades, and Ottawa is a buyer. But would you be confused if JVR went to the Red Wings?
Okay, so actually, this just in from Elliot Friedman, hearing JVR to Detroit. So great timing.
So what do you think of that?
Surprised.
Yeah.
I should have said my big answer about why he's a perfect fit.
Yeah, exactly.
Before I read the news, so I sounded really smart, but I'm trying to be really open and honest with everybody. Yeah, looks like JVR is going to Detroit. I think that makes sense. I think obviously they move out Bertuzzi, they move out Philip Roenick, and Jacob Vrana. They're going to move a body in. Like, I wonder if there's going to be salary retention involved. I wonder what they're going to be sending back. If it's another roster piece that's going the other way to Philadelphia. I think it's difficult to fully evaluate the deal without knowing what happens. But I do find it really interesting that it's the Red Wings making that move, mostly because we haven't seen the Seattle Kraken do anything yet. And this is a team that is in playoff position. They're third in the Pacific right now. And they haven't been buying. And the West is up for grabs. The Kraken have been good. It's odd to me that Seattle's been really quiet. But I'll need a second. I want to see what this return is for Detroit because I'm very curious. They've been selling and now they're buying. The biggest name that's been left on the board. Why? What's going on?
Well, I think the message probably from Steve Yzerman is we legitimately have a chance at the playoffs. Don't count us out because we lost a couple of games in a row here, and those were definitive losses.
Why would you start selling people?
I mean, I think they got a great return for Philip Roenick, right?
Those were strategic selling.
I don't think you can say no to that deal. They got a good deal on Bertuzzi. But maybe JVR is a little kind of, I guess, a little sweetener to the Dylan Larkins of the world that are, hey guys, you know what? As we sit here today, Detroit, I'm just looking at double checking here. They're at 65 points and they got some games in hand. Like the Islanders are holding down the final playoff spot. Mm-hmm. If Detroit wins their games in hand, they're ahead of the Islanders. Now, again, a lot of things have to happen, but from a points percentage standpoint, Detroit's right there with the Islanders, with the Sabres, with Ottawa. Yeah. So maybe this is a little bit of a message from Steve Yzerman that, hey, we're not putting up the white flag as much as you think. We're a buyer and a seller, if that makes sense.
It just doesn't make sense to me because yes, those moves were strategic in the sense that you take a look and you see what Tanner Jeannot is bringing back to Tampa Bay. And you understand that, hey, let's get in on this sell high market, but when they were actually firmly in playoff position, like they were in the second wild card spot, they're in the hunt, they're in the playoffs. All the reporting out there was everyone's staying pat. We're not moving Bertuzzi. He's off the board. And then they lose those games to Ottawa. They drop back, and now everyone's for sale. So part of me wonders about this JVR move. Like, is there going to be a deal in the drawer? Like, maybe this isn't a rental for James Van Riemsdyk, because it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me that they are selling off all these assets just to send some back to Philly to bring in a rental player when the East is just a powerhouse.
Yeah. Well,
and on that note, my coffee's here.
Oh, yeah, this is perfect. You dip out for your coffee, and I'll bring in Fluto Shinzawa. You're talking about Eastern powerhouses. Hey, Detroit, of course, sending Tyler Bertuzzi to Boston earlier this week. Fluto Shinzawa does a great job covering the Boston Bruins, who have lost 8 times in regulation so far this season. So legitimate Stanley Cup contender. Fluto, first of all, thanks for joining this live edition of the Athletic Hockey Show. Hope your deadline day has been going well for you.
Quiet, so pretty good.
Yeah.
The Bruins have made all their moves.
Exactly. The Bruins have made a bunch of moves. The Orlov move, and they've done a lot of things that I think have solidified their position into where they are now. When they made the trade for Bertuzzi, there's a lot of people that were like ready to call the shenanigans on Taylor Hall, and this feels like cap circumvention. And isn't it convenient timing that Foligno and Hall are banged up? Could you give our viewers and listeners a little bit of an update, just from an injury standpoint, on Taylor Hall and how that factored into Don Sweeney at the deadline?
Yes, Ian. The Bertuzzi deal was not really on the front burner for the Bruins. They were monitoring the marketplace, but 6 days ago in Vancouver, Taylor Hall goes off the ice. 3 days later in Calgary, Nick Foligno gets checked into the boards by Nikita Zadorov. He limps off. So there's 2 left wings out. And Don Sweeney said yesterday that they might not be back in time for the end of the regular season. So that's okay. We don't know the severity of either injury at this point, and maybe the Bruins don't know either, but they know enough to put Taylor Hall on long term, 10 games, 24 days. So 2 left wings, and then Brad Marchand, he gets a skate cut in Edmonton right above the ankle, and then he hurts his knee last night and leaves the game in the second period. So all this goes to show that it's just so dangerous, right, the NHL, and that things can turn so quickly in terms of injuries. So they can put Taylor Hall on long term, which frees up $6 million in cap space, which allows them to get Tyler Bertuzzi from Detroit. Tyler practiced today for the first time. He's probably going to play tomorrow against the Rangers on the Bruins' third line with Charlie Coyle and Trent Frederick. So that's a nice complementary wing that can play power play, can play penalty kill, and who knows if Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno are out for the rest of the regular season, maybe into the playoffs, then what do we always say? That depth matters. And this is another depth piece for the Bruins, just like they added Orlov and Halfway before.
Yeah, and speaking of Orlov, coming in, what is it, 8 points in 4 games? I love the nickname Bobby Orlov. Can you give us a sense of how well is Dmitry Orlov just fit in there into Boston? It just feels like a perfect match right now.
Sensational. He's been absolutely terrific through 4 games, playing left side, playing right side, power play, second power play. He has a real nice one-timer on the power play. He scored 1 5-on-5 goal in Calgary right off the faceoff. So he's got some offense there, but he's got some bite. He plays with some edge. He's a good skater, very smart, some real nice vision. Made a really, really high-end play in Edmonton against Connor McDavid of all people. McDavid's coming in off the rush. Orlov stands him up at the blue line, gets the puck, sends it right up to Foligno. Foligno and Coyle go the other way, and they score on on-man rush. So he gives them a whole lot of options. Look, somebody's going to get hurt either at the end of the regular season or in the playoffs when it comes to defense, and that's why they brought him in. They have 8 legitimate NHL defensemen now, and they've always had an injury history in the playoffs, like a lot of these teams have done in the playoffs on defense. So he's insurance, but right now he's been second best defenseman after Lindholm after 4 games. He's outstanding pickup.
And hi, Fluto. I'm here now. I don't know if Ian tuned you in, but I was waiting for a coffee.
Priorities, Hailey.
Yeah, sorry about that. But I heard everything you guys were talking about. I know that Orlov has been a great fit, and Tyler Bertuzzi almost became a necessity for them due to injury. It sounds like the Bruins are still waiting for an update on Nick Foligno. I guess the question is are the Bruins done? Like, if they hear something today where maybe both guys are going to be on LTIR and that'll open up even more cap space, like, could you see the Bruins doing anything else, or do you think Don Sweeney's done for the day?
He said yesterday, Hailey, Don Sweeney said that he's probably done, that they have enough, and that, yes, depending on what kind of clarity they receive on Foligno and Hall, Foligno is still on regular IR. So, yes, I guess there is that possibility. He's making 3.8 AAV. So you could shift that over to long term and possibly make another deal. But Don said pretty much yesterday that he's done. So I think maybe if there's a depth acquisition out there that makes sense for the Bruins, perhaps they would be listening here in the last few minutes. But I think all business, including David Pastrnak, all family business has been settled for the Bruins.
You know what? I think it's great that you bring up Pastrnak, because of all the things that Don Sweeney did at the deadline, let's be honest, locking up arguably the best right winger in the game, certainly in the conversation of the best right winger in the game, on a long-term deal was the best move that I think he made. Can you walk us through how that all kind of came together, and why now and why not earlier in the season? Like, did the Pastrnak camp just wait and kind of get to this point, get a little bit more leverage?
Absolutely, and that this was stress out a lot of players, right? To be going into your contract year and not have a deal done, I'm sure there'd be a lot of players come July 1st of that year. They'd be like, "Where's my contract? Where's my pen? Can I sign right now?" David is not like that. If you know him at all, he's very confident in himself. He doesn't take things too seriously. He's kind of a free spirit, and I think that helped him this year in terms of his preparation for this fall. And then once he got started, the momentum kept on going for him. And he said when he went home at night, he'd be thinking about his deal, but overall, he wasn't stressed about the situation. He knows how good of a player he is, how unique of a goal scorer he is, and how critical he is to the franchise, because let's face it, it could be as soon as next year that Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci are gone. Brad Marchand's soon to go after that. He's 34 years old. So David, Charlie McAvoy, they are the two foundational pillars of this team. So Bruins had no choice but to sign and to meet David's price. David was always in control of the negotiations. And Cam Neely said yesterday, the Bruins wish they could have gotten this done a lot sooner. Probably saved them a lot of stress in terms of knowing what that number would be for David, and then having a better idea of what their budget will be like for not just next year, but for the next 8 years. But yeah, this was always going to get done. This is going to be a big number. It could have been an even bigger number for David, considering how well he's played and how there's probably still growth left in his game.
I've got one more for you, Fluto. And before I do ask that question, before you came on, Ian and I were discussing a report from Elliot Friedman about JVR to Detroit. It sounds like there's some conflicting reports. Sounds like there's no trade in place at this exact moment in time for James Van Riemsdyk. It looks like the Red Wings are in the process of moving another player to make that happen. So I think there's maybe a couple of technicalities. The trade is not done yet. They're not waiting a trade call. So just wanted to get that out there for everyone listening live as we were talking about the JVR Detroit conversation before Fluto came on. But back to the Bruins and you, Fluto. I think for myself, I've been looking at this Bruins team as the team to beat in the postseason. I think the way I've described them a few times now is they're giving me extreme 2016-17, I believe that's the right year, Golden State Warriors vibes. Just like wire-to-wire dominance, brushing, with like historical numbers. They're going to win the championship, just call it now. But I guess my question for you, Fluto, is what is the biggest roadblock for this team, whether it's a team like Carolina or Tampa, Toronto, New Jersey, or their health and maybe the age of some of these players? Like, is there a concern that some of these guys that you were just talking about, as they're going to be aging next season? Is that a concern heading into the postseason for Boston, or do you think they're just going to be full steam ahead until they win a Stanley Cup here?
No, these are all terrific points, Hailey, in terms of the health, right? If three guys go down, then it's a whole different story. And this is a good reminder. Hall and Foligno, that this was within 3 days, 4 days that those guys go down with long-term injuries, and then Brad gets banged up twice. So it just shows how quickly things can turn. And yes, this has been discussed in terms of managing their older players. This is going to be a grind toward the end. And Bruins don't care about results at this point. They're so far ahead of Toronto second place in the division that points don't matter. So yes, they will be resting, especially on back-to-backs with travel. Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci, maybe Brad Marchand. So they'll get their breathers. That's probably the biggest concern in terms of just health, overall injuries, well-being in terms of some of these older players. They just, let's face it, they just don't bounce back like they used to before. But in terms of opponents, I think there's just one team that's given this team, the Bruins, hiccups, and that's been Carolina. Not just this year, but this is a team that beat them last year in the playoffs. So for whatever reason, speed, physicality, tenaciousness, they've been all over the Bruins, dating back to last year too. So maybe that's the team that scares them. But overall, there's just one team that I've seen that can legitimately say, okay, maybe this keep the Bruins up at night, because they've been such a machine, just so deep. Like, what team has two goalies like Allmark and Swayman? What team has two number one defensemen like Lindholm and McAvoy? What team has Bergeron and Krejci making $3.5 million total on their cap hit? It's just amazing what this team has done, how the GM has rebuilt this team on the fly, how a first-year coach in Jim Montgomery has come in and expressed even more than what Bruce Cassidy has done. So I don't see any team being able to contend with the Bruins. Obviously, the East is going to be a grind for anybody, but yeah, Bruins are the team to beat.
Well, listen, Fluto, it's been great having you on this live edition of the Athletic Hockey Show, Trade Deadline Special. I know today was quiet for you, but last few days certainly haven't. We've loved your coverage, and we look forward to all your coverage down the stretch of the Bruins as they try and chase down maybe 120, 125 points, something like that. Thanks for this, and yeah, we'll talk to you again real soon.
Okay, guys. See ya.
Thanks, Fluto.
Right. There goes Fluto Shinzawa. Yeah, the Boston Bruins. Golden State vibes, maybe, Hailey, but they lost, right? The year that they won 73 regular season games.
Well, that's why I said 2016-17. So I'm talking about the year where they weren't historic. They just won the championship. So it was the year after they had the 7-loss season or whatever it was. And then they went and won a championship the next year. So they weren't quite record breaking, but they still dominated wire to wire. It's interesting that Fluto brought up Carolina as the team that could kind of flirt with them. You know, they give the Bruins a lot of trouble. I've been waiting for the Carolina Hurricanes to maybe do something a little bit more at this deadline, and we're 7 minutes away from the deadline. I'm still waiting. Oh, and by the way, JVR to Detroit, not happening.
Wow. We just took people on a needless
it's a
roller
good thing
coaster
I said it didn't make any sense. Maybe.
Well, yeah, I mean,
watching, and he was like,
exactly.
"You're right. He's an unrestricted free agent."
He's like,
anyways, I think
Hailey just made a great point. Yeah. Well, hey, listen, there's a lot of people who thought the Boston Bruins in the offseason should have underdone a rebuild, right? Like, they were at the end. It felt like
that.
A lot of people thought they weren't going to make the playoffs. Go back, and they changed the coach. Bergeron was a question mark to come back. Everybody thought that Boston, Pittsburgh, Washington. Go back and read it. Everyone thought that they were at the end of their competitive cycles. They obviously didn't, and that was the wise move. Chicago, though, they did. They decided it's time to blow it up. They said goodbye to Alex DeBrincat in the offseason, and then obviously goodbye to Patrick Kane. And let's bring in Mark Lazarus. Does a great job covering Chicago for us. And
speak for yourself.
Live from the playroom. Live from the playroom.
Sorry,
Mark
there's
Lazarus.
nothing happening. I'm trying.
I just want to. I was listening to you guys with Fluto, and the last two teams that were as good as the Bruins are, right, were the Lightning that won like 60 games and lost in the first round, and the 2013 Blackhawks who started out 21-0-3. They won the cup, but they almost lost in the second round. They were down 3-1 to a mediocre Detroit team, had to win in overtime of Game 7. This is the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like, the Bruins have like a 20% chance at best of winning the Stanley Cup because hockey's just so stupid like that. So let's all pump the brakes a little bit on the Bruins.
This has been a humbling week for me, and my Bruins are going to go wire to wire.
I mean, they're awesome. They should.
Off and getting hurt. I was like, oh.
in a just world, the Bruins would go wire to wire. They're clearly the best team. And Carolina's awesome, and there's all these other good teams. It's not even close, but that's just not how this sport works.
No, we don't get fun things. What's it been like, Laz, dealing with, obviously this wasn't the biggest deal of the deadline in terms of the return, which is kind of wild to see Patrick Kane not bring in a haul. I understand that he's been hurt. I understand that he hasn't had the stat line this season, but I feel like there wasn't a player with a better resume available at the deadline this season. What's the whole Patrick Kane saga been like for you, Laz, and then watching him obviously debut on Broadway last night against the Sens?
Well, it's been excruciating because we've been talking about it for like a year and a half now. So in some respects, I'm just glad it's over with. Right. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird how the Blackhawks traded the greatest player in team history, and I do believe he's the greatest player in team history. And they got, a second rounder, a conditional second rounder, and a fourth rounder for him. And that's actually pretty good considering that they had no leverage whatsoever, that Kane only wanted to go to New York, and that Chris Drury knew he only wanted to go to New York. I mean, Kyle Davidson did a decent job of getting what he got, but what he got was awful. I mean, Patrick Kane was supposed to be the piece that really kickstarted this whole rebuild, right? He's going to bring in a first-round pick, a high-end prospect. Jonathan Toews was going to get you a second-rounder, at least something like that, because who wouldn't want Jonathan Toews as their third-line center? And now Toews is off the table because, he's dealing with long COVID. We don't know when he's going to play again, if he's going to play again. And Kane got you a middling return. I mean, we've seen 8, 9, 10 first-round picks handed out this year for mediocre defensemen, and Patrick freaking Kane can't get you more than a second rounder. I mean, That's the power of the no movement clause. And, Kyle Davidson's done a good job. He's got a first rounder and 4 second rounders, I think, so far this deadline. But it's hard to look at this as anything but a failure because you traded Patrick Kane and you got very little for it.
Mm-hmm. But it's kind of like Giroux last year. Claude Giroux was like, like you said, I'm only going here, Florida, Colorado, maybe that was it. And it's tough, but overall, did Kyle Davidson do what he wanted to do with this roster, Laz? Because obviously Max Domi went as well, but they're stripping it down. They've made no bones about it. We all knew that was going to happen. Did he kind of shed everything that you thought he would shed? I know we're almost at 3:00, so maybe there's something else to come, but how would you grade Davidson at the deadline clearly in a seller's mode?
Can I add one thing too? Sorry.
Yes.
Claude Giroux at least got the Flyers a first-round pick.
Yeah. No, I mean, if Kyle Davidson's goal was to make the worst team in the history of the NHL for these last 21 games, and it kind of was his goal, he succeeded. I mean, in the last, 10 months, he's traded Alex DeBrincat, Kirby Dach. He let Dylan Strome walk. He let Dominic Kubalik walk. He traded Patrick Kane. He traded Jake McCabe. He traded Sam Lafferty. He traded Jack. I mean, everybody on the roster. Like, it's Connor Murphy and Seth Jones looking around the room like, dude, what happened? Where'd everybody go? I mean, this is going to be an absolutely – and even their best prospects are going to spend the next month in Rockford because getting them playoff experience in the AHL is more important than winning in the NHL. Obviously, they want to lose. They're trying to get Connor Bedard. They're trying to be as bad as humanly possible, and they still have to, quote-unquote, catch up to the Blue Jackets, right? They're not even the worst team in the league right now by points or points percentage. So they got some room to go because they won too many games this year with this lineup. But there's a quarter of the season left, and oh my God, the roster they had at practice today. It's hard to imagine any team losing to this team, frankly. And it's hockey again. It's a dumb sport. Things will happen. There's Peter Mrazek or Alex Stalock are competent goalies who will steal a game here or there. But with 21 games left, it wouldn't shock me to see the Hawks win 2 or 3 of them.
Mm-hmm. I guess last one from me, Laz, is why is Chicago the ideal destination for Connor Bedard? Because it seems like we're heading in that direction. So let's just get the good vibes going in that. Get
the tinfoil hat on that they're going to chill the ping pong balls and all that, Patrick Ewing style. I mean, obviously the league would love for him to be in Chicago. Chicago, for 12 years there, whatever it was a huge moneymaker, the biggest moneymaker in the States for the league. The league is better off when Chicago is good. When Chicago is bad, it's bad for the league. So obviously Bedard coming to Chicago and re-energizing the hockey city and selling. I mean, they've done a good job selling tickets this year and selling jerseys and stuff, but people were still buying Kane and Toews jerseys. Then nobody's buying a Seth Jones jersey. Nobody's buying an Andreas Athanasiou jersey. So If they get Bedard, that's great. I mean, you can make an argument that Columbus, it would be great to have Bedard with Gaudreau and build that up as a market. It would be great to have him in Southern California and Anaheim. It'd be great to have him in Arizona with the new arena coming in a few years. But I think if the league had its druthers, Chicago is clearly the number one choice where they would want to place Connor Bedard, because when Chicago was, I mean, how many freaking NBC sports games did Chicago have over those years where they were on top? Every single Wednesday night, they were Wednesday night rivalry against some random Eastern Conference team that they couldn't care about because they just wanted Chicago on TV. Mm-hmm. The league likes Chicago to be good. The league wants Chicago to be good. So if you got your tinfoil hat on, that's a good one.
There we go. All right, Laz, we'll leave it there. Appreciate you dropping by this live show. Thanks for this, man, and I'm sure we'll get you again real soon.
All right, good luck making this interesting for another hour.
There we go.
Only a few more minutes. Well,
yes. I can tell you, we've got some minor deals that have come through here. Ottawa has
all of them. My questions are why.
Ottawa has just acquired Patrick Brown from the Flyers for a 6th-round pick. He's a centerman. There's a couple of other little deals here that are starting to he's a guy. Troy Stetcher to Calgary from Arizona appears to be a done deal. So look, these are some minor deals, and we'll try to get to the bottom of the
Troy Stetcher is an NHL defender.
That's a statement. That's an accurate, valid statement. Anyway, tell you what, Sean Gentili is standing by on the other side. We're going to take a little break. We got a bunch of comments we're going to get to from our viewers and listeners too. So we'd love it if you hopped in, fire away any questions you have for myself, Hailey, Sean Gentili, James Myrtle coming up at about 1:15. So just fire them in there. We'll take a break. We'll be back on the other side with Sean Gentili. You know, we're into the new year, and this is the point in time where it's really hard to stick with your fitness goals. Remember those New Year's resolutions that you made? That's why you want to make sure you know everything that Peloton can do for you. Because, okay, you might know this. Peloton makes bikes. I know. But there's so much more than that. There's treadmills, other classes like yoga, strength training, boxing, you name it. Peloton instructors have a variety of different training backgrounds and styles of motivation that can work for you. They can get you moving, whether you only have a 10-minute window or 30 minutes or an hour, whatever you need. Peloton can help you out here. They offer thousands of on-demand classes available 24/7. That means you can work out whenever and wherever it's convenient for you. I think this is the best part of Peloton. They got the best playlists going. Maybe you're a 90s pop guy like me. Maybe you're looking for something a little bit more soulful or something while you're doing yoga, whatever it is. Peloton has music to fit your mood. And you don't have to be a super athlete like the ones we talk about here on the Athletic Hockey Show. There's classes for every level. And so whether you're looking to do something every day or you're brand new to working out, Peloton can help you achieve your fitness goals. Try Peloton risk-free with a 30-day home trial. New members only. Not available in remote locations. See additional terms at onepeloton.ca/home-trial. That's onepeloton.ca/home-trial. There we go. All right. So we're officially now past 3:00 Eastern time. Now we do want to caution our viewers and listeners that at times these deals can trickle in. So maybe in 20 minutes, 40 minutes, there might be a few more things happening. But is there an update here on the JVR saga? He looked like he was going on the move, then he wasn't. Is there any clarity on that here, Hailey?
So it looks like he's just not getting dealt by the deadline. Whatever was possible did not end up getting finalized or consummated with the Detroit Red Wings. I hate when people use that terminology. I just read it from Elliot Friedman. There has to be a better way to say that.
Engineer the trade.
Yeah.
Trade wasn't engineer. Whatever. Bill. Okay.
Anyways, JVR not being moved at the deadline, which is really great stuff from the Flyers.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I promised. I said the snark factor would have to rise significantly with our next guest. So let's bring him in. Sean Gentili does a lot of it. Boy, he's like the jack of all trades. Anytime there's a column to be written, kind of looking at an issue in the league, or it's time to take a sharp knife to the Pittsburgh Penguins, he's our guy. He's one. Actually, there's no shortage of people at the Athletic taking a sharp knife to the Pittsburgh.
I'm gonna say, I'm part of a 4-man Ron Hextall assassin squad at this point.
It's unbelievable.
All I tweeted earlier was the Penguins confuse me in that blew up. People were like, yeah, me too.
It's the Ron Hextall pile-on, baby. Like they had he made a couple minor moves today that would have looked a little bit better had it not been for the Granlund catastrophe a couple of days ago. Yeah, still digging out from that here.
Let's start there because we did get a question from Corey. I don't know, about 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago. Corey had asked us, has anybody had a worse deadline so far than the Pittsburgh Penguins? So now that we've gotten to 3:00, Sean, what's the answer? Has anybody had a worse deadline than Ron Hextall and the Pittsburgh Penguins?
No, they're at the bottom of the list. The ironic part, I think, about the stuff that they did today, which is adding Nick Bonino and moving out Brock McGinn's contract, for which they took Dmitry Kulikov, who's a spare part at this point. Those are reasonable, functional moves where they cleared cap space, right? Brock McGinn, signed by Ron Hextall, by the way, first free agency signing when he took over the job, was going to make $2.75 million a year for the next 2 years. Huge issue. A huge wrench in the works. Part of the cap problems that they've had over the last couple of weeks. So he's out. He's off the books. That's a good move. Nick Bonino, beloved teammate. Mike Sullivan loves him more than he's at the top of Mike Sullivan's pet list for sure. So like all these are all positive things, right? But it's all just nuked by the fact that their big $5 million ad was one of the worst defensive players in the league and a guy who doesn't really fix any issues and also makes that much money for the next 2 years. So yeah, Hextall's at the bottom of the list, number 32 out of 32.
It seems like they did so well to move all that money off the books just to do all of that with it. Like they did the hardest part. Like somebody took Kasperi Kapanen. How many times did we talk about on our show, like the Penguins don't have assets that other teams want, and somehow they found a way to move money out. They found a way to open up space to just do this.
This frenzied couple days, right, where they wave Kapanen. Everybody rolled their eyes at that because it was like, who would want him? And that was mainly people who've watched him here over the last couple of years. You can't imagine, any other team taking a flyer on him. So it goes. Blues do. They bail out Hextall in that regard. So, good for him. But then after that, it turns into, waving McGinn and waving Mark Friedman and trading Teddy Bluger out of nowhere a couple days ago to Vegas, which is when it seemed like they were in on Jacob Chicker. And I think that's probably a fair set of dots to connect that they wanted to have at least the available space. The end result there again is, subtracting another piece from their bottom six. They lost 3 out of their 6 every day bottom 6 forwards in a matter of 24 hours. That is part of this crazy, cap clearing spree that they went on. And the end result is a team that I don't think is meaningfully better in any way at all.
Okay. We're talking about which some teams that have had poor deadlines or whatever. And it's funny because at one point JT Miller's name was linked with Pittsburgh, and that was everyone was like, wow, like unbelievable. Pittsburgh and Vancouver could get together. I think the Twitter would melt down. What do we think of Vancouver? Like, how do we really truly view the Canucks right now, Sean?
Like midway through talking about Hextall and the Penguins and kind of putting them at the bottom of the list, I thought maybe that was my like whatever the reverse of a hometown bias is. I feel like that was maybe in play there because what the Canucks have done. I mean, have they lost the plot? Was there a plot for them to lose? I think adding a player like Hronek, who's a good player, he's a second pair defenseman. He's in the midst of one of his best seasons. At least when he wasn't paired with Ben Sherratt. He's been good. And on a lot of other teams, he'd be a meaningful add. But, this is just more proof, I think, that they can't do a rebuild. They won't do a rebuild. Where that comes from, whether it's the owner, doesn't matter at this point. But, yeah, their time frame's out of whack, right? And I think the reason that people responded as badly as they did, especially in Vancouver, is that with the Bo Horvat trade, getting that first round pick back, just some of the stuff that went on before the last week, it seemed like maybe they realized what their time frame was, right? That they realized that going out and getting 25, 26, 27-year-olds wasn't going to help. And then they go and completely do a 180 from that mindset in the Hronek deal. So yeah, if they're not 31st in the league in terms of what they've done at the deadline, they're tied with Pittsburgh for sure.
What do you think about one of the other deals one of the few deals that went down today. It was Jordan Greenway to the Buffalo Sabres for a second and a third. Seems like a lot for a guy who, at least in the last year or so, hasn't brought a whole lot to the table offensively. He is a good defensive player. He can take on tough minutes. I'm sure that's something that the Sabres are coveting if they're giving up that much for Jordan Greenway. But what do you think about that deal today?
He's an interesting player because there aren't a lot of guys who are 6'6" in the league at this point, right? So you can add that check next to his name. Okay, cool. Physically really impressive. Had some production last year on that Marcus Foligno, Joel Eriksson neckline. He was the third guy, though, it should be said, right? Those other two guys did a little bit more on the grief line, as Russo called them, than Greenway did. But man, he's of a type. We know what kind of guys the Sabres like, and we know that they can make it work. Right? I'm not going to compare him to Tage Thompson, right? Because Tage Thompson he's a little younger. He certainly showed a little bit more production, I think, than Greenway has offensively to this point in his NHL career. But it's also impossible not to see some shared DNA there. He's 6'6". He's a U.S. National Development Team alum. He's a Don Granato guy. Like, I'm not saying that he's going to turn into, human highlight reel, Rocket Richard potential winner, Tage Thompson, but, I don't know. I get it. It's a major price to pay, but the guy has the physical traits that Buffalo looks for. So maybe I'm a little higher on that than other people.
And look, we were wondering too, like, is Buffalo going to do anything because they're on the cusp of that playoff picture? As you look at that, and it's kind of a 6-team, arguably 7, but certainly 6 teams are in the mix there, Sean, for 2 wildcard spots. You got Pittsburgh at 71, the Islanders at 70, Buffalo 66, Ottawa 66, Florida 66, Detroit and Washington, or Washington 66, Detroit 65. They're all there. If I had to ask you right now, on trade deadline day, you have to pick 2 of them that are making the playoffs. Who do you got?
I still like the Penguins to sneak in and get stomped in the first round by whoever they played. Like that's where I've been at with them all season. So I'll go there. And I'm just not ready to write. I don't know if the Panthers are going to make it, but I'm not ready to write them off either. I think they've still got pieces. Bobrovsky has played well. There's a level of urgency with that team. Because of the fact that they dumped their first round pick in the Bedard draft for Ben Sherratt. So I'll go off the board. I'll say them. They don't like it's not an Islanders situation where the Islanders, yes, they're in that spot for now, but they have a ton of games in hand. Every team has games in hand on them rather, and Matt Barzal is hurt for the next however long. So I'll go Pittsburgh and I'll go Florida, and I'll say that both those teams get stomped by whoever they play in the first round.
A little bit of news here, guys. Sorry to change the subject, but it looks like the full Calgary, Arizona trade is Troy Stecher and Nick Ritchie for Connor Mackey and Brett Ritchie. That's super fun. And then the big one, obviously, I'm bearing the lead here. It looks like John Klingberg has been traded to the Minnesota Wild. Ducks got the deal in just under the wire. I guess that's why Minnesota is getting, like, they opened up cap space with Greenway, and now they can get John Klingberg in the books. Do we like that fit for the Minnesota Wild? Is that what they really needed to do at the deadline?
No, they still need a center.
Okay.
Oscar Sundqvist is, he's fine. He's a guy. He can contribute on a fourth line, but the Wild's problems, for as fun as they've been to watch, for as well as Billy Guerin's, maneuvered here, their minuses are still their minuses, right? They haven't added where they've needed to add, and that's down the middle. So we'll see what happens down the stretch. Can Marco Rossi work his way back into the lineup? I mean, whatever. Same question we've been asking about them for the last however long. But no, they still don't have enough down the middle, and until they fix that, I can't take them all that seriously.
Yeah, I mean, and they kind of soured on Matt Dumba, it feels like, right? But if you're Anaheim, if you go back to the start of the season,
about that guy getting traded for years.
Yeah, Matt Dumba is like, he's going to be the new Jake Chikrin, right? Where it's like, okay, we're tired. Although he's on.
I'm glad that Dumba saga with Minnesota is finally going to end. It's been
years.
Yeah, it has.
It's been years.
they held on to him. He's a UFA after all this, and good, because we can all move on and take him off the trade boards wherever he ends up, because it's been a long time coming.
Do you guys think the Klingberg situation is going to be a cautionary tale for free agents moving forward? I think a lot of us thought, John Klingberg didn't get the long-term. Hey, I'm going to sign a 1-year deal. I'm going to take, whatever he got, $7 million, but I'm going to kind of bet on myself. I'm going to have a big year, and then I'm going to get moved. And Anaheim was probably thinking, maybe we can get a good asset for John Klingberg at the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that other teams will now look at this and players as free agents be like, no, I don't want to sign a 1-year deal?
You would imagine. I mean, I don't know if it's going to. It is a cautionary tale. It's tough to tell people not to bet on themselves, though, right? Like, if they have that mindset, if they're like, I'm going into year one, into this last year, signing a 1-year deal or whatever, if they're that focused on the rise and grind mindset, I don't think you're going to talk them out of it. But man, for a team, I think that's a cautionary tale. Not that the Ducks had all that much wrapped up in it, but they clearly thought they were going to be able to sign him, gas him up, play him on a power play, give him a bunch of 5-on-5 time with Zegras and whoever else, and then flip him at the deadline for something meaningful. And it just hasn't worked out that way.
Hey, you know what? We're actually we're gonna do a quick trade here. I know he's not here yet, but I gotta step out. So again, this is a live show. Sens General Manager Pierre Dorion is going to speak in about 10 minutes, so I got to leave my perch in the press box, and I'm going to leave this show in the very capable hands of the two of you. Okay.
Great.
Okay. So
right.
We're waiting on Myrtle. He isn't quite here yet, but I would like to say, that in honor of the Toronto Maple Leafs' big last hour move, Maple Leafs added a guy 6'6", 6'7", redeems Horna in a trade with Calgary. We are adding our own 6'6", 6'7" player here in James Myrtle.
When he comes in,
tall.
Yeah, he is. He's like 6'5", whatever he is, right? He's a tall guy. So
7'2".
That's going to be.
Children are taller than I am.
That's going to be the trades. All right. So we want to see some Friday chemistry here. Okay. Friday vibes.
Oh, I'm so tired though. My God, I've been typing all day, Ian. This is unreasonable.
All right. Listen, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, both of
Absolutely.
you. This was great. Even though this trade deadline was a little bit flat, this was a lot of fun. So thanks for doing this.
Totally. Thanks for having me.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, Ian.
I hope someone sends me the script I have to say later. Danielle.
You should probably talk in your microphone.
Can you not hear
I
me?
think that'll be a great idea. Yeah, there you are.
Things are going swimmingly since Ian has left the show. Looking at the Klingberg conversation, though, we did get a comment in here as we wait for Myrtle. There's lots of comments coming in live here on the stream. But with Klingberg, it was, Klingberg didn't really bet on himself. Like, his agent just kind of fumbled the bag. Like, I think he fired his agent. He got a new agent. So that's the cautionary tale, is like, don't wait that long and play your hand the way that you did, because he still made $7 million this year. So I don't think John Klingberg's a cautionary tale for anyone. Maybe he left some money on the table because he wasn't very good this year. So he's probably leaving money on the table long term, because his next deal probably won't be for $7 million.
If you're a player who bets on yourself, just make sure you're trending in the right direction. And that just hasn't been true for John Klingberg for the last however many years, right? Like, he wasn't playing the same role in Dallas for a reason. And I get why maybe he or his agent thought that this would work out. Like, you want players to have confidence in themselves, but man, you look at the way he was trending as an individual. We knew that the Ducks were going to be terrible, maybe not quite as bad as they have been. You got to be careful. If you're going to bet on yourself, you got to make sure that the situation's right. And you certainly got to make sure you're getting good advice from your representation. Clearly, John Klingberg didn't think so. He's moved on. He moved on really after that disaster of a free agency tour over the summer, right?
Mm-hmm. A couple more comments we got in here, and this was something that I brought up in the live blog. It was something that I brought up on the show already. The Seattle Kraken were one of the teams that were rumored to be poking around on John Klingberg. The Kraken come to the deadline, and now, of course, things could sneak under the wire. They don't get announced yet. Like, that always happens, but it's 3:19 Eastern, and the Seattle Kraken didn't really buy, and they also didn't sell off some of the pending free agents that they have on the board right
Mm-hmm.
now, Kraken just didn't do anything. And I'm kind of okay with that. I think obviously the West is open to win and the Kraken are in a playoff position, but I also think that this is a team and Ron Francis is a GM. We know he values his assets and his cap space, and I don't think that Ron Francis was going to do anything to sacrifice everything that they built coming through the expansion draft, right? Yeah, they're very good this year, but it's still only year 2 of the organization, and they do not want to be getting rid of all of the assets that they did all that work at the expansion draft to get, just for what?
Mm-hmm.
To try to have a good
I think there probably was a middle ground. I think
Yeah.
there was probably a middle ground for them where like you don't have to, we're not talking about trading Shane Wright or, anything crazy like that. They're where I was interested in seeing if JVR would be an option, right? A team like them, a team like Colorado. We have a comment from Graham, who's the Avs fan. He's asking why they didn't add a middle six winger. I think you can lump them into the JVR mix. That's a place where he would have made a lot of sense. It seemed like both were in on him in some capacity. Who knows what Philly's asking price was? It clearly was something that no team was willing to meet on a player who, yes, his statistics this year are brutal. A lot of that has to do with the environment he's playing in. I think he's a guy, even though he's 34, and I say this is a 37-year-old man who's talking about JVR like he's a mummy or something, which is ridiculous. But I think you could have added him to a lineup and he seemed like a prime rejuvenation candidate, right, for a playoff run. So I was interested in seeing him end up with Colorado and Seattle in particular, but clearly that didn't come to pass. So yeah, I think there is a middle ground where, second round pick, third round pick, whatever, where you could have nodded towards the playoff run that you're on, or the playoff push that you're trying to make if you're Seattle or whoever else. And then without like actually trying to sell the farm. And I think JVR would have been a great candidate there. And now here we are, 322. It doesn't seem like he went anywhere.
Mm-hmm. And we do have James Myrtle standing by. Finally, he is here.
Wow.
It's time.
Big get.
Finally. We had
is this the end?
For 3:15 Eastern.
James, you have 6 minutes and 40 seconds to talk about whatever you're going to talk about here. So make it count.
I get that.
What's going on?
I'm here to talk about whatever you guys want me to talk about. I'm ready.
We've been left, so we have we've got no notes. I'm just kidding.
That's not true.
I'm just joking.
Well, I think the Leafs are done. If that's your first question, it sounds like today was a nothing burger for them. So.
Well, they got a lot of their heavy lifting done already, right? Like today was okay to be a bit of a dud. Like, did you think that they left something unchecked, James? Because they get the top 6 forward, they get a bottom 6 forward, they check a box on their blue line. Like, what else were you maybe thinking the Leafs could get up to today?
I mean, what a lot of people were looking at is that first round pick they got from Washington for Sandy, and were they going to do something with that? Were they going to flip that for? I don't know. I mean, the thing is, like, the Leafs brought in 6 players. Like, how many more players can you even integrate 6 players properly in 20 games? That's going to be the real test for Sheldon Keefe to get them ready for the playoffs. Is you got all these guys who have never played together. Basically, most of their lines are new. Most of their D pairings are brand new, and you're getting ready to face Tampa Bay in 6 weeks. So
I said that to Dom yesterday, right? Like, how many more guys do you want to incorporate in the lineup there? I know that they have that first round pick from Washington. I know that they have more defensemen now than they certainly did a week ago. So it seemed like they were adding assets to maybe add to the third line or whatever the plan was there. But at some point, you got to be done, right? And I think it made sense for them to find themselves in that spot today.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that I might quibble with is like maybe get another depth goaltender because you don't know what's going on with Matt Murray, and Samsonov's young and inexperienced, but I don't know. Like, I thought maybe they could get like a Thomas Greiss or like some sort of number 3 option because Murray's played 19 games this year. Like, I don't even know. He's on this trip here, and he's supposed to be back at some point, but he's one sprained ankle away from not being available in the playoffs. And then all of a sudden you've got Joseph Woll, who's, barely played in the NHL, is going to be your backup. So that would be the only thing that I think they could have done differently.
Mm-hmm. And he looked okay yesterday. But I feel
he's
like
had a great year.
yeah,
he's had a great season. So
it seemed like Dubas has kind of made the choice on who the goalie tandem is going to be, and they're going to stick with that.
yeah, I mean, I think they're still high on Matt Murray, despite the fact that he's barely played the last 2 years. I still think that they think he's going to come in and play really well over the last month of the season, win back the starting role, and start on the first game of the playoffs. But we've been waiting for that. We've been waiting for that all year. And I mean, the thing too is that Samsonov's outplayed him when he has played. So I don't know how they could go back to Murray, but they still seem pretty high on him. So we'll see what happens. I mean, if they end up going out in the first round again, the goaltending is going to be something that everyone's going to be talking about, because they didn't have very much cap space last summer, and they spent what little they had, $4.7 million, on Matt Murray, and he's barely been able to play. So that limited how much more dramatically they could make over the roster. Like, I just, you get Ryan O'Reilly on the double retention, and you get Jake McCabe on half retention for more than 2 years. I mean, I think those are both great moves, and then everything else is depth.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't. The Sandin thing doesn't surprise me either, because I don't think he didn't want to be here. He certainly didn't want to be here as a number 7. He wasn't going to be happy, and he wasn't going to be the kind of guy, if someone got hurt and you put him in the lineup, that was going to be ready to go. So
we saw all 6 of the new faces in the lineup last night against the Calgary Flames. Luke Shen and Eric Gustafsson made their debuts, but that was the first time we saw all 6. And obviously now we know that the deadline's over and the Leafs haven't done anything else. This is their roster. This is what they're working with. There's going to be some changes, like who's in the lineup, who's out, and who slots in where, but this is what the Leafs are going to look like down the stretch and into the playoffs, James. I think one of the biggest questions, at least for me, is where do you see the right fit for Ryan O'Reilly? I am still personally torn. I wrote about it in the Leafs report cards last night. I don't know where he fits best. Like, I guess it just depends. Do you want Ryan O'Reilly to be part of like a productive top 6, or do you want him to be the center for a really good matchup line against the Tampa Bay Lightning in the postseason?
I suspect they're probably going to put him on third line center and use him in a shutdown role. But the issue is that if you put him there, whoever he's playing with, they're probably not going to be a line that can generate offense, right? So, personally, I was at the game in Seattle and they looked fantastic, and then they go into Edmonton and they look brutal. So, there's still a learning curve there for what they're going to do with the lines. But in Seattle, watching them play, it was like the Leafs had 2 first lines, basically, with the magic that Marner and Matthews were creating. And then you roll out Tavares and Nylander and O'Reilly, and it's like, wow, like, this is really impressive. So I think that they have something there. And I wonder, in the playoffs, it could be you see a little bit of both. Maybe they go back and forth. Maybe they have one look at home and one look on the road. That could be something that they attempt to do. But
right.
You put O'Reilly in the top 6, and then all of a sudden you got David Kampf on your third line, probably not getting a lot of offense there, probably not getting a lot of offense from your fourth line. And that's been a problem. Last year against Tampa in the first round, Tampa's bottom 6 greatly outplayed Toronto's, especially offensively, and it was one of the differences in the series.
Sean, you still there? Oh yeah, we're all still here.
I'm focused on the news of the.
It does look like
we got the Klingberg return. Joe Smith reporting this. The Ducks are getting a 4th in 2025. Andre Schuster, who I forgot was still in the league, and the rights to Nikita Nesterenko, who Corey Proman texted me. He says Nesterenko is a very just okay prospect. That's how Corey termed it. Okay. And apparently they weren't going to sign him anyways. And the Ducks get to retain half on Klingberg. So this
not much.
No,
not much.
They thought they were going to get a first round, and they retained for basically a 4th round pick and some roster flotsam and jetsam. So didn't work out.
Klingberg, like a lot of Ducks, had a terrible season, so it kind of sewers his value.
It is amazing how bad every Ducks numbers are. Like we went into that when we were looking at Kulikov, because Kulikov is a guy who you knew was going to move in some capacity. He was, an effective player for the last couple years. Ends up in Anaheim, playing on a terrible team, playing big boy minutes, against top lines, and he got caved in. And that's true for Klingberg, and it's true for a lot of other guys in that roster. So
It's amazing you're Klingberg, and he's negotiating with Dallas for that long contract, and they come to an impasse, and then all of a sudden, like how much money did he leave on the table? Like he's never going to get back to where the numbers were when he it's incredible. So, and if what happened in Anaheim is really his value, then Dallas dodged a huge bullet with that one.
I think that's kind of what I was getting at earlier when we were talking about was he wrong to bet on himself, whatever. That's almost beside the point. The guy who he was for the last couple of years in Dallas, combined with what we've seen from him in Anaheim, like this is just who he is now. There's not a lot of meat left on that bone. So yeah, he should have fired his agent because he lost tens of millions of dollars that it doesn't seem like he's going to be able to recoup.
Yeah, and it's in this like flat cap environment, guys have to be really careful about going to the wall in negotiations over not that much money, comparatively speaking, when there's a big long-term deal on the table, because you can end up in a situation like this. So. Pretty incredible.
Is there a team that kind of disappointed you at the deadline, James, in terms of like making bad moves or not doing anything at all?
I didn't like what Vancouver did. I mean, I know that's not really like a hot take, but I don't understand. And there was a report, I think Darren Dreger reported that they had a JT Miller. I don't know if it was a conversation or a trade that was going to. And they turned it down because they wanted like a roster player, not picks back. I mean, I think the situation that Vancouver's in, they should disappear that JT Miller contract for futures as quickly as they can. But it seems like whether it's the new management or it's ownership or whatever, they're not living in the reality of what's happening there, where they're not going to be competitive. They're not going to be a quick turn team, but they keep acting like one. So, and I would be really wary of being any general manager and going into a trade negotiation with Steve Yzerman, and he's trying to give you a young defenseman having a great season. I'd be like, what's the catch? So we're probably going to see what the catch is here, and like maybe throughout the end of the season. But Hronik's got a big qualifying offer, 5.3, and he's going to need a new contract, which is going to be huge. And whether or not he can live up to that deal, I guess we'll see. And we'll see if like he gives them anything in the window when the Canucks are going to be competitive, which who the hell knows when that's going to be.
And even best case scenario, that guy, you said 5.3 QO, you sign him long-term. He's making almost 4.5 this year alone. Like he's past the point of being a cost-effective player. You're not, even if he's good, you're not going to be saving any money on whatever you pay him. It's crazy.
It's I've been here for a couple of days in Vancouver, and it's a mess here. And everyone you talk to here is like, this is a disaster, and they're going to have a hard time selling tickets. There's going to be, I remember back, I think it was 98 or 99 when everything was a complete mess here and they were getting 13,000 going to games. Like we might see a repeat of that at some point.
I mean, it seemed like there was we said this before you came on, but it seemed like there was cautious optimism over the direction of stuff with, even though the Horvat return isn't great, but at least suggested, because there wasn't some other, that the main piece wasn't another 27 or 28-year-old guy. There was some kind of cautious optimism, it seemed like, from what I've seen, at least from people on Twitter and whatever else, that maybe this was going to be the pivot point. And clearly that hasn't happened. They've overcorrected in a big way.
I feel like we need to not be surprised by what Vancouver's doing, though. Like Jim Rutherford came out and said, we're going to be competitive. Like he said, 3 years was generous. Like they think they're going to be good in 2. So they're making moves based on a management ownership group, whatever it may be, that thinks that they're going to be able to ice a really good roster in 2 years. So they're
I don't know what's funnier
what's
funnier, signing JT Miller to that contract originally, or then turning down the chance to maybe get out from under it because you want draft picks. Like, what is the more ridiculous decision? Because they're both bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck. Good luck out there, everybody.
Signing him to that deal when his value was so damn high at the deadline. I sat on national television last year and said, why did the Vancouver Canucks not move JT Miller? And people in Vancouver were like, because he's great.
He was
you sign guys at their absolute peak value, and then I mean, look at they got Ekman Larson, that people are talking about potentially a buyout for him, and you look at the buyout number and it's like, oh my, like I think they're going to be like a $7 million cap hit just on the buyout. Like it's incredible.
They need to just eat it. They need to just keep him, play him. Like a buyout for that high for that long. Like
he can't play though. He can't play. His body's done.
I guess that's door number 2.
You send him to the AHL and you get your $1.1 million and Parade. cap space. And like, it's incredible here what's happened. And the big thing is that they're trying to do this quick turn. Is I don't know if the star guys are going to want to be here. I don't know that Demko or Pettersson are going to want to be here. So then what do you do?
Move Brock Besser, I think that's gonna be a problem.
Just continually something that people forget.
In that room who are very close with Brock Besser.
People forget players have agency. They have some amount of agency over their future. They can on some level decide whether they want to be a part of it or not. People forget it all the time. Mm-hmm. Oh God, I wish I was a fly on the wall for the JT Miller conversations between Vancouver and Pittsburgh, because they certainly happened. And I wish I could have seen how they went. That would have been fun.
Hopefully more of that comes out. I mean, like, Pittsburgh's the other team that's taken a lot of heat right now. So can you imagine if they would have pulled that trade? Like, what would that trade have even looked like, do you think, Sean? Like, what would Pittsburgh have been trying to throw in some
So I think the day before yesterday when they
that would be a huge mistake.
I think that was the fear of a lot of people around here today, was that Pettersson was going to end up going out, because it seemed like they were trying to do something big. They'd already used all the cap space that they had on Granlund. I think that was at least part of their plan on Wednesday, was adding the cap space necessary to be able to accommodate Chychrun or accommodate, maybe Miller a little bit more easily. It fell apart, and then what happens? Someone panics and Michael Granlund gets added to the roster. So, but yeah, it's pretty gross mismanagement, honestly. That's the other end of the conversation when we're talking about Dreger's report, that that there was a conversation that was had, and Patrick Allvin was like, no, whatever, we need a roster player coming back. Like, there was another guy on the phone, right?
Right.
Somebody was rescued. Someone was bailed out by Patrick Allvin in the Vancouver Canucks. And I think all signs point east. I'll say that much.
Right. One more Leafs question for you, James, and actually one little bit of news here from Pierre Lebrun, our colleague at The Athletic. He says, Flames GM Chuck Fletcher says he, quote, did not receive a firm offer from any team on James Van Riemsdyk. Says they spoke with one team about a trade concept, but it was conditional on that team making another move, and that move didn't happen. Worked the market hard past few weeks, but no fit.
How about you make the hard offer, Chuck?
When did Chuck Fletcher go? When did he go to the Flames, Hailey? I don't remember that.
Did I say Flames? Oh, no, sorry.
I had to call you out.
Did I say Flames? I meant Red Wings.
She totally did, right? Oh. Sean's not backing me up here.
I didn't sleep.
I zoned out. I wasn't paying attention.
Okay, it's fine.
I was reading Pierre's tweet myself.
Everyone knew what you meant.
I don't.
That's too bad for Van Riemsdyk, because I think Sean was saying earlier, it would have been nice to see him go somewhere, and he's had a pretty good season in Philly. But not that anyone's been watching him, but he's a very good guy on the power play, even at his mummified age.
He was he's so brave. I'm just trying to pull this last tweet up from Chris Johnson that I saw, James. It was about Leafs not doing anything else. Matt Murray, they have enough cap space to be able to get him off LTIR, and they have enough cap space to not just activate Matt Murray, but also sign Matthew Knies to his entry-level contract once the NCAA season/playoffs are complete. And this goes perfectly with the question that we had in the comment section here, was how does Matthew Knies fit into the Leafs playoff plans this season after he's done in college? And that'll be the final question for you.
Yeah, I was talking to Cap Friendly actually just before I came on about how much space they're actually going to have. I think they're going to have, Cap Friendly thought it was going to be around 850 is what the Leafs are going to have to work with. So that's probably close to exactly what Knies will get on the contract.
Right.
The question is, when is his season over in college, and when can he come in, and how many games can he play? Like, he might only get a couple of games depending on how deep they go. So Kyle Dubas was recently in Minnesota, met with Knies, watched him play. I'm sure they worked out whatever the contract details were, and I'm sure it's going to get done. And then it's going to depend on how he plays. They're going to give him a shot in the regular season, and if he does really well, then he'll play in the playoffs. But it's interesting. Like, they're so tight to the cap. Like, if they spend almost all that 850 on Knies, they can't even, unless there's injuries, they can't even recall some players that they've got in the AHL because they don't have they can't bring up Wayne Simmons, and like they're really, really tight. So it's So the hope in terms of like bringing up people to fill in at forward it's really Matthew Nyes. Like he's going to play an important role for them here.
I feel like league wide, this is where we're really seeing that. Look, we've seen a ton of trades over the last week, more than we typically do. Like
everyone said that because the flat cap, it was going to be a boring deadline.
The flat cap's revenge is what happens now because a lot of these teams are going to have major trouble managing the bottoms of their rosters for the next however many weeks. Like, we saw deals deadline day, kind of a bust. But the last week there was a lot of action, and now we're gonna watch teams pay the price, I think.
Well, look at the Rangers, the perfect example, right? Like, there's going to definitely be more of that.
Pittsburgh, they don't have a full roster right now, and it doesn't seem like they're gonna for the next little bit.
The Leafs are carrying 9 defensemen. They don't have any cap space for it's bizarre. So if 2 forwards get hurt, then they're gonna be, what are they gonna play? They're gonna play 8D. Like
Morgan Riley left wing.
Morgan Riley.
All the fans have been asking.
Oh my God, they've been begging for years. Play him up, baby.
It might actually happen thanks to the cap.
Oh God, that would be the worst thing that could happen for like the Morgan Riley critics, because they would just feel so vindicated in hating his guts and saying he's a bad defender. Anyways, thanks, James.
Yeah. Good show, guys. It was fun.
Oh, great.
Mendes tagged me in. I didn't realize I was going to be doing this. That's fine. Glad he's taking care of his own
business. I didn't know that I was going to be stuck doing this with Sean and you for a half an hour.
Oh, good.
I didn't drink enough coffee for this.
All right. Well, good luck, guys.
Don't fire me.
Thanks, buddy.
Okay. Thanks, everyone, for joining the special live stream edition of the Athletic Hockey Show. Thank you to Sean for being tagged in and doing that on zero notice. I know you have a ton of stuff left to write today. So these days are always super, super long. And you took a bunch of time to come and do this. Fluto, Laz, Myrtle, and Mendes obviously was in here too. Thanks to everybody for listening, for watching live on YouTube. And for making comments and asking us questions. This was a lot of fun for me to do as well. And I just want to remind everyone that this show is going to be going up as a podcast in a little while. So please make sure you follow the Athletic Hockey Show on your favorite podcast platform. And right now you can get a 1-year subscription to The Athletic for $2 a month when you visit theathletic.com/hockey show. Thanks again, everyone, for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week. Deadline is looks like it's officially over. Thanks, everyone.